What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Team Kitchen Fable video. Jacob here. It's been a while since we've done a classic constructed video, but since we're back into season 2 of the Flesh and Blood Competitive Team League, pretty good time to get back and started and get to it. So we had a lot of busyness during the ProQuest season, but now that we're in off season, we're getting some good reps in against a bunch of other good teams. Week 1, it's us versus the Hyperloops, which is one of the toughest teams in the league. It was us versus them in the finals of season 1 and definitely pretty hard opponents to get on the warm-up week of the league. So going into this matchup, it's going to be me on Prism versus Viserai, and this is a pretty difficult matchup, I think, but it's doable from Prism's side. What makes it difficult is that Viserai has a lot of 4 damage breakpoints and arcane damage, which makes it very hard to keep spectral shields alive, and their weapon attack costs 1, and they have a bunch of go again, so ending the turn with killing an aura is very easy. So due to those things, we decided we'll go with a little bit different approach where we're going to try to be a very defensive style deck and block out as much of their big turns as possible and come back with Command and Conquers, come back with single card herald turns, which is just where we use a tunic counter for like a War Tune Herald or a Miraging Metamorph, and then trying to get good value off of Arclight Sentinel. So it's somewhat untested from our side. It's just kind of a different take on the matchup. We are taking out Ode to Wrath, Genesis, and Merciful Retribution. The only yellow auras we leave in are Parable of Humility and Arclight Sentinel. And then we have all the blue auras in. Essentially, what the blue auras are is a 0 cost 4 defense card, because if they kill it with a Rosetta swing, they did that instead of attacking us, that saves us 4 life. It can mostly ignore Pierce Reality and Passing Mirage, but they can't necessarily ignore Shimmers. That's going to build up counters very fast, especially if we're blocking out and all we do is block out and then attack with Shimmers. That's going to get big over a couple turns. And then Haze Bending is another one. They can sometimes ignore Haze Bending, and I think we'll see that during this game. But if you can get it out early and you still have Arclight Sentinels left, you can get a couple points of value off of Arclight Sentinels if they destroy those and you get Spectral Shields and they leave the Haze Bending around. But otherwise, really the main one we're looking to stick is Shimmers of Silver. Everything else is just playing defense and trying to reduce their damage output. And the idea is after we stop as many of their big turns as possible, say they're out of Revel and Runeblood, they're out of Sonatas, maybe they run low on Mavrian Skies, Mordred Tides, their turns start to look pretty awkward, especially if they don't have access to go again on a turn. Even if we don't necessarily deck them out, what can happen is they draw a really bricky hand of all attacks or all non-attacks, and then we can just start to take momentum back from there. So we'll see how that works out, and I'll go ahead and get started with the match. So I think my opponent wins the dice roll after an initial tie. And definitely whoever wins wants to go first. Getting an arsenal is so important for Viserai. Getting Runechant set up on turn 1 is also very important. And then, of course, for Prism, landing an aura on turn 1 or just getting an arsenal is quite important. So I draw not the worst hand. I have some... it would be great if they end their turn without an action point, and I can just stick an Arclight Sentinel right away and then take momentum, but all they do is make a Runechanted pass to me. So what I'm going to do is play the Herald of Judgment. This is good in the case that they have Rattlebones. Of course, they have no graveyard, so it's not going to stop anything being played from Banish this time, but it's really just to get some damage through. And I'd rather have a blue block 3 in my hand, and also the blue is going to help me cast Arclight Sentinel instead of using the Arclight to cast that Herald of Protection on the end of that turn. So they have an awkward turn 1 as well, or turn 2 rather. They just send the Runechant and the Rosetta, and looks like we're having some technical difficulties early. We just had to rewind a couple times. But yeah, they just hit me with the Runechant and the Rosetta. It was a sneaky 3 damage. I think there could be some argument to blocking it there, but this is still a pretty good turn. I start with the Herald of Protection. If it gets popped, I still have the blue to back up and pay for footsteps and come in with Command and Conquer. So getting on hit effects in against the Viserai early is important to wear the air armor down. If you can wear the armor down and come in with a Herald of Erudition, that's huge. But even then, just wearing that armor down so that your later on hits are more likely to connect is quite important. So we hit them with the Command and Conquer. This is awkward because Viserai does run a lot of 2 blocks, so we'll see how he chooses to block this out. Math on Command and Conquer, how I like to think about it is if the opponent blocks with 2 cards, then they just lost probably an average of 4 damage per card. If they do not block, then they take 6 and lose 4 damage from the arsenal card, which is worse. So they block out with armor and a card, and they come in with a Shrill of Skull form, lead the charge, which is a very annoying amount of damage, and we have an awkward decision to make. So there's always awkward decisions, and being able to make the right decision when you're faced with weird numbers in your hand, I think is what sets apart good Prism players, and I do not count myself as that yet. So what happens here is we blocked 6. The Shrill was coming in for 7 since they created a Rune Chant, and the 7th point of damage was soaked by the Spectral Shield. And then they're going to come in with a Swarming, and they have 1 left to do a Rosetta Thorn after this. And yeah, this is just a lot of damage to take early, especially if I'm on the plan of trying to block out, but it looks like what I locked myself into is just ticking the tunic up and then using the tunic in the blue to cast Parable. Problem with this is when they don't even have an arsenal, so they might be very happy with just weapon swinging at Parable and passing to me, or even making some Rune Chants and then swing at Parable and pass to me. So I'm not getting very much value out of this Parable of Humility. If all they do is swing at it with their weapon, sure, it makes them pass their turn, but it doesn't soak 4, it only soaks 2 because the Rosetta wasn't turned on, and it didn't soak any damage on its own. Parable takes 1 damage away from every attack action card the opponent plays while it's live. So if I can play this and they play 3 attack action cards, then Parable soaks up 3 damage effectively, plus the Rosetta swing at the end, which is a lot better. But if I spent 2 cards to cast Parable and all it did was soak a weapon swing and they didn't even do any attack actions, that's a very bad value. So this is the start of some very negative value plays that I did on my side when I was hoping to do as efficient value as possible to save my life and dwindle my opponent's life. So yeah, exactly what they did is make a Rune Chant and swing at Parable with Rosetta, and then pass an arsenal a card. I am left with 4 cards in hand, which is not bad. I have a Miraging Metamorph to start the turn. Really not that amazing. I don't have any instant speed auras to flash in if the Miraging gets broken. Otherwise, all I'm doing is coming in with the Herald of Triumph after this. Oh, I guess I did have Arclight to flash in. Forgot that that was there. Yeah, I'm just following up with a Herald of Triumph. It's just a blue, so it's not that amazing. He does pop it. There's no reason to pay for the action point. I have nothing else to do after that. There could be some argument to use those 2 floating resources just to make a Spectral Shield and prepare for the future since I had them floating anyways. But generally, you want to keep at least 1 or 2 cards in Soul for the turns where you do have auras built up, and you could pitch a yellow to give them all go again. Another awkward turn from the opponent. They ended up blocking out a lot last turn and just coming on with Rosetta for 1 and 2. 1 arcane they built last turn and then 2 physical. So we'll see. This is not necessarily a good hand for when they're doing less attacking. It would be great if they were doing a lot of attacking because I have the Fate Foreseen and I could potentially cast the Parable of Humility. But I think I kind of tricked myself into just taking this damage here. It would have been more disciplined to maybe block some of it, but it's just 1 and 2. It's really annoying to block those numbers. So I end up taking it and then doing another Miraging Metamorph. And then pitching a red awkwardly to do another Herald of Triumph, like back to back, same turn. Not very threatening at all. I'm getting damage across, but it has no on-hit effect, the Herald of Triumph. So it's just going to build the soul and go next. So it's not that great. They play the Mordred. I have the Arclight Sentinel in Arsenal. This is a good opportunity. I probably should play it in response to either the Mordred or the Sonata. Um, I must have forgot about the Arclight or just figured there's a better chance. Also, uh, pitching a blue and two yellows or a blue, a yellow, and a red past Arclight is very awkward and it kind of puts you off doing it. But if I had casted the Arclight in response to Sonata, I could have probably stopped a lot of damage. They could potentially hit me with some Arcane, but I can just Arsenal the Command and Conquer, and then potentially do that on my next turn. So a really important aspect when you're going for this defensive game plan against Viserai is getting big value out of your Arclight Sentinels, and stopping a Mordred Sonata turn with an Arclight is definitely big value. It's countered if they have a lead to charge, which you're kind of betting on if they have it or not. He's already used one, and we're not that far into the deck. But I think the right play was definitely that I should have Arclighted in response to this Sonata. I don't think it's ever right to Arclight in response to Mordred, because they're generally going to be coming in with another non-attack after Mordred, unless they specifically have a Sonata or a Swarming Gloomveil. So I think waiting to see what they do after the Mordred, generally they'll do like a Sonata or a Mauvrion Skies. That's better because you eat a second card. Because if you respond to the Mordred Tide with Arclight, then they can just save the Sonata for next turn. And if you respond to Sonata, then you make them waste the Sonata and the Mordred. They get a lot less value out of those two key cards, and they only have two left of each of them in the deck. So all of that to say, I definitely think it should have been responded to the Sonata by Arclighting. But instead, it resolves. I take 2 damage from it, and we'll see what attacks my opponent has for me on the turn. Immediately punished for taking the Arcane. Not that I had a choice because it was 2, I believe. And it comes in with a meet and greet, which is going to have go again since I have taken Arcane. And he has 2 rune chants and meet and greet for 4. If the meet and greet hits, he gets another rune chant. It's pretty actually easy to block. I can block the 2 rune chants, and then my third resource can be paid for footsteps. And then he has 2 more Arcane, and then a Dread Triptych, which is amazing on a Mordred Tide turn. If I was able to Arclight earlier, I would have stopped so much rune chant generation and damage. So definitely hurts that I did not do that. But now he's able to create 6 rune chants off of the Dread Triptych plus Viserai's effect from the Mordred Tide bonus. And I can block out. If Dread Triptych hits, he's going to get another 2 rune chants, so I definitely want to block it. And I might as well just throw the armor there. There's probably some argument to taking 2 rune chants and blocking with both cards so that I can preserve my armor for other on-hit effects later, but I did not opt to do that in the game. So he does another Mordred. I kind of jumped the gun on this one and just respond by casting Arclight right away. And I kind of was I realized very quickly last turn that I needed to Arclight earlier. So I think this turn I should have waited for another card, whatever it was going to be, so that I could eat it, but instead he gets to save it for his next turn. We get the Arclight out of there, and then my turn is just going to be make a shield, ping for 1. It saves me a life in the future, does the damage in the current turn, and then we'll see what happens. Yeah, so it looks like he had the Sonata. I'm assuming that Sonata was in hand last turn, and he was going to break Skeleton. So if I was able to Arclight on a Mordred break Skeleton cast Sonata turn, that's huge. If I had waited until he broke Skeleton and casted Sonata, that's a lot more resources saved against me. And if he doesn't have lead to charge, his turn just ends immediately. So definitely that's a big point in the match that could have turned things in my direction. Viserai has minimal offensive resources, and if he doesn't get a good Skeleton turn, then he has even less. So he does end up getting one. X is going to be equal to 4, I think, because it's cost reduced by 6, and he pays 2 more into it. He only gets 1 hit, which is lucky for us. Sends 1 Arcane at us. We know that he's going to be coming in with a lot of Arcane, so we might as well just start stopping it now. And then it's going to be Rune Flash for 4 go again with 6 Rune Chants coming at me. And I have a blue and two floating and a tunic up so that I can stop the rune chance. If he has another meet and greet in hand, it's going to be pretty good to stop all of the arcane so that his meet and greet is turned off. But the problem is I have two other yellows in hand, so stopping the rune chant on the next turn, on the next attack, is going to be a little bit more difficult. I think I opt to stop the rune chants this time, and then I have a sink below, but this does not have. Oh, so I let the spectral shield eat the other rune chant. Um, what I could have done is use the tunic counter to stop that last rune chant, think below this, and then I still have a spectral shield up. So the spectral shield would actually stop the rune chant that comes in on the next attack. That would have definitely been better. Um, I sunk a soul shield because it was not going to be easy to block with and not efficient because he does a lot of wide small attacks, not many large single attacks. Um, so I get rewarded by getting another 3 block. It would have been better if it was a blue, probably. Um, but regardless, he's coming in with another rune chant and 4. So I can use the tunic counter to stop this rune chant. And then I chose to take it because the tunic counter can be used uh, later to like cast a parable, for example, or cast Arclight off of blue and a yellow and tunic. So generally you want to be doing high value plays off the tunic counter, but I do get pretty immediately punished for taking that arcane because I think he has a meet and greet coming up. Um, Either way, this hits me, so I can't stop arcane anymore because the swarming's values are all turned on, and I definitely get punished. Couldn't necessarily have known the meet and greet, but if I did pitch a yellow to stop the 2 rune chants, his turn would have ended here, which would have been very good. But regardless, I'm taking another one. I definitely want to stop this on hit, so I give 3 block plus tunic for footsteps, and he gets me for 5 at the end of the chain with 1 rune chant and Rosetta for 4. So still a pretty big turn, even though he only hit 1 card off of Sonata. If he hit more, I would have been in a lot more trouble. But also, if I saved my Arclight and did it the correct time last turn, that wouldn't even have happened at all. So we're back to his turn. He does not have an arsenal. I just drew and passed on mine after taking Tunic to 1. Sometimes Viserai can have some awkward and we're hoping for, and maybe we can regain momentum. But let's see. Finds this third Sonata. It's going to be for x equals 0, but we'll see what he chooses. He chooses x equals 1. He reveals 4, gets a Command and Conquer and a blue Spellblade Strike. Obviously, Command and Conquer isn't scary because we don't have an arsenal right now. It is 6 damage, which is a lot percentage of our life total. We do start by stopping the Arcane on the Sonata, and then do floating. I'm not sure what is being discussed right now. Oh, I think I forgot if I took the damage off of the Sonata. We just made sure. I was on 14, so I did uh, prevent 1 and take 1 and have 2 floating. So he has a Mavrine into Blue Shrill, which is going to be 5 with Go again. If it hits, he gets a Rune Chant. I have a nice way to block this. Not efficient in the grand scheme of things, but in the current turn, it looked efficient to me, which is that I can stop the Rune Chant, and then I can pay 4 to play Parable of Humility, which drops Shrill down to 5, and then I can block, or drops it down to 4, and then I can block with Wartune Herald and Equipment. It's probably better to save the equipment and just take the 1 Arcane and pay my 1 resource into Footsteps instead. But ultimately, this isn't the best use of Parable again because he's probably just going to end his turn by Rosettaing it. Parable is only going to save 5 points of life off of 2 cards, which is very underrated when I could just be saving 3 points of life per card or 4. Um, so regardless, I think that's what's going to end up happening. I'm realizing that I should have saved that resource for Footsteps so that I didn't have to give my Skull Cap, but it is what I ended up doing, and he's still able to Rosetta. If he Rosettas me, it's very good because I do take 4 damage, but my Parable is going to be live for all of his attacks next turn. He generally can't start by attacking it because it loses his action point, but he makes the very disciplined play. Of course, he just kills the Parable right away, and I get minimum value out of it. I get literally 5 life out of it. So he starts with one rune chant and E strike for 5 go again. He still has 2 cards left and one in arsenal. And at this point in the game, I am looking at what he has used. He's used very few revels. He's used all of his sonatas, but the revel is what's going to be hitting me this late because that's such a spike of damage. Not very easy to block all of that arcane at the same time. So I want to know if I can get through his threats, even if I'm on low life threshold, I have a chance of winning, but that's why I start checking the graveyard. So he's coming in with E Strike. I stopped the arcane, and I think I'm going to be blocking some of the physical. Yeah, so I block 4 and take 1. A lot of times when they start their turn with just an attack, it's pretty easy to give the footsteps, but because it's likely that they'll play a non-attack and then an attack because Viserai requires non-attack so badly to turn his stuff on. But we actually knew that Command and Conquer was there because of the Sonata. So I think I should have taken the Arcane and then blocked more of the physical this turn, especially because the Sync below is in hand. I should have at least, regardless, given a Sync on the E Strike and then saved a 3 block for the Command and Conquer because I cannot use Sync on Command and Conquer. So that is another misplay that I have caught in watching the replay. This is very good learning. Hopefully it's good learning for you guys. Hopefully it's not just boring you guys watching me make all these mistakes. But calling out the mistakes maybe is good learning for you guys as well. So yeah, we knew that Command and Conquer was there. I think it's greedy to save the Sync below. It's good saving the Sync below in Arsenal for a different on hit, like another meet and greet, or anything with Mavri and Skies in front of it. But in this instance, when every point of damage matters, I really should have just blocked early with the Sync and given Herald of Erudition to the Command and Conquer. But instead, I ended up taking the entire thing. This is another mistake. Haze Bending is really not a scary aura, especially because I've already used an Arclight Sentinel. There's less cards for me to punish with, and so he is basically just going to be able to ignore this Haze Bending, especially because my life is so low. He just can keep pressure on me. So I should have found a way. I probably should have just blocked 2 with the Haze Bending to preserve life and give myself a little bit extra buffer to hopefully get through his threatening cards. So I land the Haze Bending and then pass to him. My Tunic is powered up, which is nice. I have a Sync below an Arsenal and 2 blues in hand. So I'm going to be pretty efficient at blocking whatever he gives me this turn, most likely. But we'll see what he does. A little bit of thinking goes by. I'm just checking what kind of threats he has left. Still has 1 Mordred, I think, and then quite a few Revels. So he has an awkward turn. He just plays Oath of the Arcanite. It's not actually really that awkward. It's pretty smooth. He does a Oath of the Arcanite into Rune Flash, and then he's going to end with Rosetta, definitely at my face. But we're able to stop 2 Arcane, have 1 floating. We'll be able to give a 3 block plus Footsteps or one of my Sync belows. We'll see which one I choose. I think probably giving the Sync below is fine here because we have a second one as backup in hand. Then we can save the 1 floating to footstep block one of the Rosetta physical probably. Oh, I forgot that Rune Flash is coming in for 5 actually because of Oath. It doesn't have an on hit, so I didn't necessarily need to block like that. But yeah, we're left with some more awkward blocks with 1 Arcane, 2 Arcane, and 2 physical on the Rosetta. And I think I just choose to start blocking everything. So my skull cap is turned on, which means I can use my tunic to block the rune chant, my blue to skull cap block all of the arcane from the Rosetta, and then my red can just physically block the Rosetta. There's really no reason to start being aggressive at this point. Like his life total is too high. I can't just take this damage to do a Miraging Metamorph that he can just take and then come back with a 5-card hand. At this point, like my only win con is to him to draw awkwardly and for me to be able to block enough damage to not die. We'll see if I can even get close to that, but in the meantime, I'm just going to be fully blocking this. It's inefficient, but it does save my life total, and I get to ping for 1 with Haze Bending, put a Tunic counter, and then pass. There's another 5-card hand, still keeps being very scary. It might be better than the last turn, we'll see. So he's going to start with a Become the Arknight. I'm not sure what he's going to search. He banishes an Oath and searches for a Runic. Runic is a very annoying card for multiple reasons. For one, it's above 6 damage, so we cannot block it with Footsteps. And its on hit is that they can destroy an aura we control, and if they do, they get a rune chance. So that's a huge value swing. We lose an aura, and they get an extra point of damage, and it's a 7 base power attack for 3. So in the best case scenario, if it hits and they kill an aura, they get 1 point of future damage. So it's already 2 cards for 8, which is 1 card for 4, which is like the best aggro. And aside from like the above rate stuff, that's the good rate that you want to be looking for aggro. But it's also removing the aura from our side, which is valuable as well. So it's a very annoying card to play against. Luckily, we do have a Soul Shield, which is going to make blocking it easier, but not by much because, like I said, we can't give it Footsteps because Footsteps will just break. So we block the Arcane, and then actually we do have the Sing Below Arsenal, which I forgot. That makes blocking it a lot easier. And so we do get to block with 3 and then 4 from Arsenal. And then for the Rosetta, we can stop the Rune Chant with 1. Then we can pay for 3 for the Rosetta Arcane and then block the physical. This might be a scenario where we should have saved the Soul Shield in Arsenal for another turn just for blocking and taking a little bit more chip damage because it probably can stop a lot more in the future than it did on this turn. But I just got tunnel visioned on blocking all the damage in the current tense instead of saving Soul Shield for the future to potentially block more. Like if he hasn't amplified the Arknight or something, Soul Shield is going to be able to block a lot more, or a Ninth Blade like he just pitched. But it looks like he pitched to create a Rune Chant, and these are the awkward hands that we're looking for in this game plan. Like we are low life, but I mean, it's not awkward. Rattlebones into Swarming into Rosetta is like quintessential late game Runeblade turn, but it's not like amazing. What is amazing is casting the Revel. So we do have the blues to stop a lot of the damage. It's not comfortable, but we can stop 4 of the Rune Chants with a blue. I think a slight adjustment would have been better to block with red Wartune Herald instead of yellow on the Swarming so that we could pitch the yellow for more Arcane, but that would just block 2, and the red Wartune Herald on the blocking the physical of the Rosetta is also just blocking 2, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So I do take 2 damage from the Rune Chants. I'm going to end up taking 2 Arcane from the Rosetta. I could block with Footsteps and go to 1, and then use my Tunic counter to Wartune Herald him for 7. It's bad if he has a Popper. Also bad because that only puts him to 10 and puts us to 1. And being at 1 is bad because we just have to commit a blue to the Rune Chant or to the Rosetta Arcane every single time. So even though we can get 2 points of value out of the Footsteps that turn, we choose to just continue blocking fully and hope that he gets Awkward Hand. So the Haze Bending is getting in there. We probably got like 5 points of value out of it throughout the game. Not bad, but it's not good when we're not being aggressive whatsoever. Back to him. He has 4 cards this time. He still has 1 Revel left in the deck, I think, or maybe 2. And at this point, if we can actually live through those, we're feeling pretty good because that's a lot of threats gone. And even though we're pretty low, we might be able to start coming back. But what happens is he pitches to create a Rune Chant. He has a bunch of blues, looks like blue. He has Become the Arknight and then blue Spellblade Assault. So he pitches a blue to make a Rune Chant, then comes in with Rune Flash for 4 go again, and he's going to be able to Rosetta me after this. And yeah, he's just being annoying with the breakpoints. Luckily, like I said, we have good ways to block the breakpoints. We can pitch a blue for Rune Chants and Footsteps. I think pitching any counter there was incorrect, but regardless, he comes in for 2 physical and then ends the turn. So it wasn't an amazing turn from him. He didn't have a non-attack for that Rosetta's Arcane to be turned on. And then we at least can hit back with a Command and Conquer. So he is lower on equipment. He's not completely low. So it's going to require at least a card from hand to stop the Command and Conquer effect, which is good, especially if he has a strong arsenal card, such as Revel and Runeblood. So he's going to give us a card in hand, maybe a second one or equipment. He gives us 2 cards, which is a really good scenario for us. And then even better is his turn is just 1 rune chant and 2 physical. It would be nice if we could punish by having a very aggressive hand, but we don't have. I mean, we do have an aggressive hand, but like I said earlier, the aggressive hands are not amazing when he has 16 life. So we pitch for the arcane and we block the damage, and we're just mitigating as much as possible. And then our hand is probably going to be making a shield, aiming for 2 at least, and the shield's going to save some life in the future. Yeah, we come in the haze bending in response, pitch a yellow, make a shield, come in with a shield, and then we have the Arclight in Arsenal. So this is a good time to use Arclight. We eat a Mavrian basically, and he has to go next. It's bad if he has some way to generate rune chants, because if he attacks Arclight with an attack action card, those rune chants will pop and we'll end up having to block them. And if it's a lot of them, then we might be dead. But the only out basically is hoping that doesn't happen. And so we play the Arclight, and then he just has to send his weapon at it. Luckily, we play the Arclight in front of a haze bending, so we get a second spectral shield out of that, which is pretty nice. And he does have a Rattlebones left in the deck, so I think in this scenario I actually try to attack with Herald of Judgment. That might turn off a Rattlebones play. I don't think it does in this instance, but yeah, so he takes 6, that goes to Soul, and then I get to attack 3 more times the shield. So this is one of those times in Flesh and Blood when you're like, oh man, I got my opponent to 6 life, but guess what? They got to 6 life, but they have 5 cards in hand, and they still have points of defense left on their equipment. So it's not actually indicative of this being a close game, unfortunately, and I think we're about to get destroyed. So he has a Mavrian Skies into Swarming Gloomveil, and I of course have ways to block it, but it's not comfortable. I have a Parable of Humility, which is pretty nice. That could potentially stop a lot of damage, and I have a blue and a tunic counter up to cast it. So hopefully he doesn't have amazing things to do. And this swarming, he's only created 1 rune chant, so it's only 3 go again right now. I did not cast the Parable. Oh, he could have blown me out basically by if I didn't block enough. If he creepers in the Revel, he could have, and I chose not to block because I had spectrals, I could have died from that. But I did end up blocking with Fate Foreseen. Yeah, so one way or the other, I was dead this turn. I did end up pitching the yellow also to block the arcane, and then A to make a final shield, I believe, because I had 2 floating off of the tunic counter, and then oh wow, I was wrong. I live by 1 on this turn. I'm completely forgetting. So I come in for 1. He gives it a card. He's just being safe. He plays a Runeblood incantation and comes in for 2. Unfortunately, I do not have a punish at all. I have 2 soul shields left in my hand. I should have just given him the Pierce Reality and then came in with the blue Wartune Herald with a Haze Bending follow-up. If he popped it, that's pretty good because my footsteps are dead, but that's at least more pressure. This play just chooses to be more defensive. There's many ways he can get over the top of this, but I have a bunch of blues, a soul shield, and spectral shield up, so we'll see if we can survive this turn. And his deck is getting really low, so like if we do survive another couple turns, like there is a chance. It's pretty much wishful thinking, but yeah, he has Amplify, and then he has Revel to follow it up. So there's no way I can block all of this damage, and he finishes me off. So yeah, I think this is a good game to look back on as far as checking out my misplays. Not a very good game from showing the strength of this plan, but I do think this plan has legs. I prioritized things wrongly in a couple instances. I don't think Haze Bending was a very good aura to cast that early. Shimmers is a much better aura to be casting because they do have to attack that or else it gets out of hand. Um, so that was a misplay, as well as both of my Parable of Humility turns did not get good value at all. And one of my Arclight Sentinels, I think, was good because it ate a Mavrine Skies, but my other Arclight Sentinel was very bad because I casted it too early because I was a little bit tilted from the turn before not casting it. Um, but yeah, if I had waited till that Sonata came down and he didn't have a lead to charge in hand, which I don't think he did that turn, uh, that would have been actually pretty huge because it stops a lot of, he got a lot of damage thrown on me that turn. Um, but yeah, I mean the life totals were close at the end, but he was definitely in momentum for most of those end turns. I don't know how the game goes if I fix those misplays, but in our own internal testing, this plan has like not been the worst. The Aura's plan is like really a lot more luck of the draw, I think. Like if you get a lot of double Aura turns, there's not like really any deck that can beat that. But you don't always get that, and when you don't get that, your deck is very awkward because you have a bunch of cards that don't block. They're also yellow, so they don't block Arcane very efficiently, and they're awkward to cast when you don't have a tunic counter up. Um, so yeah, this is the method that we're trying right now with Prism versus Viserai. Like I said, I think it's pretty good. I think I just made like a ton of misplays, and I haven't been playing much Constructed. I've been playing Blitz a lot locally, so not to make excuses, but Blitz has made me lose some of my edge, I think. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. I'm going to be coming out with another video pretty soon on my game from week 2, which was me against Chain, and I was on Prism. So both pretty rough matches. But yeah, we're having a lot of fun in the team league, so stay tuned for more of those games and as well as more Blitz content and just other Flesh and Blood content. So thanks everyone for watching. Like and subscribe would be appreciated. If you don't think I deserve it because of all my misplays, then that's fair. But if I described my misplays well enough and maybe helped you not make them on your own, then that's cool too.